Hey guys, it's Mrs. Rast here, and today our notes are going to be over the geography of ancient Egypt, our first section of grapes. I would have given you the pages in class before you started the notes, or if you're doing this on Edmodo, please look at today's post as I will have posted the page or pages you are going to be using to take the notes. Remember that everything in red you need to write down, and what I would suggest you do is pause the video, write down everything in red, and then go ahead and stop writing and listen to what's being said. Okay, so our title today is Geography of Ancient Egypt. Our big idea is that the combination of water, fertile lands, and the protected setting of the Nile Valley allowed this great civilization to develop and prosper on its own for many, many years. Before we talk about Egypt, though, let's quickly review our very first river civilization, Mesopotamia. What does Mesopotamia mean? Do you remember? What two rivers surrounded it? They had two problems with the rivers. What were the two problems and how did they come up with a solution? What region was Mesopotamia found in? And outside of the region, what was the land or environment like? How'd you do? This is our second river valley civilization, and like the Mesopotamians, Egypt depended on the river for survival. So the first thing you need to know is that Egypt is located in northern Africa. The Nile River, which flows through Egypt, is the longest river in the world. And unlike most rivers, it flows from the south, so down here in the bottom, up to the north. Think of this as kind of an ancient highway used by the Egyptians to get where they needed to go. And there are two regions of Egypt. We call the lower part upper, and the upper part is known as Lower Egypt, and that has to do with the flow of the river. Egypt has some physical features that make it unique. There were two types of land, the black land and the red land. The black land you can see on the left side, and that was the land that had the rich, dark soil. And this was area that was fertile and things could be grown along the Nile. The land outside of the fertile area was called the red land, and that was desert, and it was very hard to survive outside in this environment. The Nile had its own unique parts. The first part is called the delta, and you can see that on the left side. The delta is found in Lower Egypt. It is called a delta because it kind of looks triangular. And so we define a delta as a triangle-shaped area of land made of really rich soil called silt that was left by the river when the river overflowed. And this was a great place to live because it was very fertile. It was good for farming. Then you have in Upper Egypt, down in the south, strong rapids called cataracts. And these acted as natural defenses, keeping invaders out. So they acted as what we call natural barriers. So if you've ever been on the Fury of the Nile at Worlds of Fun and you're getting bumped around by the waves and the rapids, they're trying to simulate the cataracts of the Nile River. Flooding also occurred in the Nile as well as in the Tigris and Euphrates, but unlike in Mesopotamia, where the rivers were unpredictable, the Egyptians knew when the Nile would flood or dry up. In fact, it was so predictable that they would base their calendar on it. And like the Mesopotamians, they also used canals for irrigating their fields. You can see a picture right here of them irrigating. This is called a shaduf, and they could use the bucket and then swing it around to get the water into the fields. So with natural resources being plentiful along the Nile, people settled, and Egypt grew from small villages to towns to larger cities. And like Mesopotamia, they developed a surplus of food and a division of labor and a social hierarchy and all that good stuff. But unlike Mesopotamia, which we saw in our previous chapter, constantly switching hands in terms of who was going to be in power, Egypt had many natural defenses, which kept a lot of people out for a long time. They had the seas, Mediterranean and the Red. They had the desert, and they had the cataracts down here in Upper Egypt. Egypt was unified. Mesopotamia had city-states, not unified. Around 3100 BC, a leader from Upper Egypt named Menes decided to take power of Lower Egypt, went to war, and was successful. He unified both of the regions, unifying the whole of Egypt. So, as Egypt's sole ruler, he wore the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt, symbolizing his power and leadership. The title Menes took was called Pharaoh, and this translates out into Great House, but it's the title used by all Egyptian rulers up until the last one, who was Cleopatra. Menes was also the one that began the first dynasty in China, and a dynasty is a series of rulers from the same family. So what that meant is that the family kept the power. When the pharaoh would die, his oldest son or oldest male relative would take over. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's quiz time. How well were you paying attention? Here it comes. What river allowed Egypt to become a great civilization? Strong rapids or blank kept invaders out of Egypt. Who was the first pharaoh? And another name for the desert land in Egypt was, how'd you do? And that's all, folks, so make sure you have everything in red and be ready to go over it tomorrow.